For those Aboriginal people who have questioned the real attitudes that many Australians have toward their culture and their historical experiences, one Australian actually put the deranged thoughts to paper. This 2002 publication exposes a clear pattern of denial that refuses to accept the scale of violence and dispossession inflicted during colonization. The Fabrication of Aboriginal History, Volume 1. The author, Keith Windschuttle, released the book through his own Macleay Press in Sydney after earlier work critiquing media and postmodern history approaches. It formed the opening volume of a planned series directly attacking Aboriginal people and the research of historians including Lyndall Ryan and Henry Reynolds, accusing them of inventing or grossly exaggerating conflict to advance political goals around land rights and national guilt. The text focuses on re-examining government records, settler accounts, and colonial reports from 1803 to 1847. It asserts that Aboriginal deaths directly caused by colonists totaled only around 120, that resistance consisted of sporadic thefts rather than defense of country, that no organized frontier warfare occurred, and that British settlement produced the least deliberate indigenous bloodshed of any European colonization in the New World. It rejects any policy or outcome resembling genocide and attributes population collapse primarily to introduced diseases and supposed internal Aboriginal social failings. Keith Windschuttle fails with this work on multiple factual and methodological grounds. It applies an impossibly narrow standard that counts only killings explicitly recorded in official documents while ignoring that colonial records routinely omitted unofficial actions by stockmen, shepherds, and private parties. The 2003 rebuttal to Keith Windschuttle, a collection called Whitewash, on Keith Windschuttle's Fabrication of Aboriginal History, edited by Robert Mann with contributions from Ryan, James, Boyce, Reynolds, and others, documents specific distortions in Windschuttle's book. At Risdon Cove on May 3, 1804, soldiers fired a carronade and muskets into a large group of Aboriginal people. Contemporary inquiries and later analyses record at least 3 confirmed deaths with estimates reaching much higher, yet Windschuttle's book reduces the event to minimal or accidental outcomes to protect the image of orderly settlement. At Cape Grim in February 1828, Van Diemen's Land Company shepherds killed approximately 30 Aboriginal people at a mutton birding site and threw bodies from cliffs. The book labels key accounts dubious or exaggerated despite George Augustus Robinson's later investigation confirming the scale through perpetrator and witness statements. Windschuttle's book relies heavily on N.J.B. Plumley's compilations yet ignores Plumley's own statement that documentary sources alone cannot produce reliable total death estimates because so many killings went unreported. It dismisses Aboriginal oral traditions and contextual evidence of resource denial leading to starvation and conflict. It reframes attacks on settlers as criminal theft of flour and tea instead of responses to invasion and loss of hunting grounds. It portrays pre-colonial Aboriginal society as dysfunctional and prone to internal violence using selective 19th-century sources while downplaying the documented impacts of white invasion including sexual violence, abduction of women, and introduced diseases that spread through disrupted communities. These choices produce a narrative that systematically lowers the death toll, erases the Black Line military operation of 1830, and treats the removal of surviving people to Flinders Island, where mortality remained catastrophically high, as a neutral administrative measure. The damage created by Windschuttle's book extends beyond academic debate. By presenting a version of events in which colonization involved only limited, justified conflict and no genocidal outcomes, the book supplies arguments that later denialists and political actors have used to oppose recognition of frontier wars, land justice processes, and truth-telling initiatives. It comforts those who prefer to believe the nation was built on peaceful expansion rather than violent takeover, thereby sustaining resistance to measures that would address the continuing effects of dispossession on Aboriginal health, incarceration rates, and cultural survival. Many Australians accept its claims precisely because they shield national self-image from the reality of organized displacement and killing, while simultaneously portraying Aboriginal demands for acknowledgement as based on fabricated grievance rather than documented history. Windschuttle's book distorts primary evidence, applies inconsistent standards to recorded versus unrecorded killings, and erases the documented pattern of massacres, military operations, and resource destruction that reduced the Tasmanian Aboriginal population to a handful of survivors. Its arguments have been dismantled by specialist historians yet continue to circulate because they serve the political purpose of minimizing historical accountability and obstructing contemporary justice for Aboriginal people. Regardless of all that has been said, this is a very important book, as it gives a clear insight into the mind of many Australians, via the unevolved mind of the author himself, and unintentionally provides the answer as to why Australia will never find a way forward in cohesiveness, because of destructive attitudes both then and continuing.